Hello everyone, and welcome to learning how we can use neuroscience to prevent workplace violence. Throughout this mini masterclass, you will be learning new science-based techniques that have already been proven to reduce the likelihood of violence within the workplace. Your organization is going to be so much better off just by having you or anyone else in your team take this mini masterclass on innovative violence prevention techniques. So, grab your coffee and get ready to discover how you, I, and we can overcome the challenges of violence in the workplace. So, in this class, you are going to learn a few different things. 1, what goes on in our brains leading up to an act of violence. 2, ways that we can scientifically reduce those markers that create the feeling of agitation and violent behaviors. And 3, how we can easily mitigate the likelihood of workplace violence just by having the proper in-person training programs in place. All right, so the first question that we really need to ask ourselves is, how do we define violence prevention? Well, the way that we define violence prevention is actions taken to reduce the neurochemical dispositions in the brain that are proven to cause outbursts of violence and agitation within humans. In other words, anytime somebody begins to think of violent actions, or anytime somebody gets ready to behave violently, there's certain chemicals produced in their brain that we can identify and measure through the use of neuroscience. Before we dive further into how we reduce those markers, let's get a little bit more clearly defined on what exactly is a neurochemical. A neurochemical is a small organic molecule or peptide that participates in neural activity. It's basically a group of facilitators, if you will. Today we're going to be talking about 2 main types of neurochemical markers. We're going to have one marker group called the bad neurochemical marker group, or the violent one, and then the other group is going to be called the good neurochemical markers, or the good ones. The bad ones, of course, are associated with violence and aggressive behavior and erraticism, and the good ones are associated with love, kindness, and acceptance. So to break down these neurochemicals a little bit more, for the negative side, or the ones associated with violent behavior, we're going to talk about norepinephrine, cortisol, and then the most important one is tachykinin, the TAC2 version. On the positive side, we're going to be talking about oxytocin, serotonin, and monoamine oxidase. To summarize what takes place within our brains when it comes to the neurochemical disposition, anytime somebody is behaving aggressive or violent or erratic, in other words, anytime somebody is likely to conduct workplace violence, they're going to be high in norepinephrine, high in cortisol, and then very high in tachykinin. They're going to be low in serotonin and low in monoamine oxidase. For somebody who is unlikely to perform workplace violence, the reverse will be true. They're high in serotonin, high in oxytocin, low in cortisol, and low in norepinephrine, and low in tachykinin. So how do these neurochemicals affect our brain? Well, tachykinin specifically has really profound developmental effects. It is produced when humans find themselves in socially isolated situations. This was originally discovered from a group of scientists down in Antarctica, and how they all started fighting with one another when being aggressive and argumentative was never a part of their previous past behaviors. We also see the same present in current humans. For example, the last few years dealing with social isolation due to the COVID restrictions. When there's large amounts of tachykinin present within the bloodstream or within the brain, it actually seeks out previous bad experiences, because all of our experiences are these neural pathways or roadways in the brain. And it actually solidifies or strengthens those neural pathways, and we even begin to associate those bad previous experiences with people who are current in our life. In this case, we're talking about coworkers. So, for example, if I'm isolated and I have a large amount of tachykinin in my brain, I start to associate all of my negative life circumstances with the people unjustly that I currently work with because it's their fault. And the only thing that makes this true is my own belief, my own unjust belief, because the tachykinin's effects on my brain and my neural pathways. What makes the situation even worse is that our cell phones are designed to give us these hits of dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin, the feel-good chemicals that are associated with interacting with other human beings in a positive context. But because our cell phones are not other humans, we don't really develop the full scale of those chemicals, and we start giving ourselves these little hits of it, kind of like a drug. And if we are isolated, we still have these large amounts of tachykinin present in the brain. And because we are interacting with humans via cell phone technology or computers or social media, we can still receive certain types of validation that we need as social creatures being human beings, which therefore develops more tachykinin because we're not interacting with human beings physically in person, and therefore drives us further into isolation. So what could we do to change this neurochemical disposition in our brain and prevent workplace violence? Well, the answer scientists have found is really amazing, and it is positive social interaction with other human beings. So how does positive social interaction help? Well, when we interact positively and socially with other human beings, in this example, think of a workplace violence prevention training program with your coworkers, where we gamify the lessons that we're learning throughout the day in a fun, exciting, and collaborative way. When we interact with each other in this manner, it develops increased levels of serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, and it reduces all those stress chemicals. Not only that, but these neurochemicals actually unravel and undo all the negative damage that the peptide tachykinin has done to our brain. So not only do we begin to dismantle our negative thought processes, but we actually begin to develop new neural connections in the brain associated with great positive experiences with other humans. Anytime we ever have elevated levels of serotonin and oxytocin due to positive social interacting experiences with, in this case, our coworkers, it makes it incredibly much more difficult for us to actually inflict harm or pain on anyone, even if we're going through a disagreement or an argument of some kind. By having these elevated levels of serotonin and oxytocin and these newly established neural pathways in our brain that associate our coworkers with fun and laughter and acceptance, it greatly reduces the likelihood of a human being being capable of conducting violent physical action. The reverse is true when there's elevated levels of tachykinin and cortisol within the bloodstream. We are more likely to actually conduct violent behaviors against our coworkers when there's elevated levels of those neurochemicals. In essence, what we see is true workplace violence prevention programs don't have to do with identifying past criminal violent behavior indicators. It doesn't have to do with reporting somebody's behavior to authorities or human resources. Those are interventive measures. But to be truly preventative, we need to have programs in place that are fun and engaging, that carry along with them a theme and topic of seriousness. However, in the long run, when you have a properly established training program, it is one that not only emphasizes the points of ways to intervene and respond to violence, but it is actually preventative in its totality because of the way that the program is designed, and it reduces the neurochemicals in the brain associated with those negative and violent aggressive behaviors. There are a lot of other benefits that come from having high quality in-person training. For example, leadership is able to identify their staff in a new environment, and we can connect with one another, especially during the breaks, on things that we otherwise wouldn't really know about each other. Who had a new kid? Whose kid's getting in trouble at school? Who lost their wife? And who lost their father? These are all pieces of information that we usually gather around the cooler. So by having high quality in-person training, not only are we preventing the likelihood of violence neurochemically within our brains in the workplace, but it also allows us to see our workforce in a different context. All right, everyone, I hope that you found some value in this mini masterclass series. If you would like to, go ahead, click the link below so you can register for one of our upcoming masterclass programs when it comes to ways that you as a leader can prevent violence within your workplace. I hope you all have a great day, great evening, great morning, wherever it is, wherever you're at. And I hope that you take care, stay safe, and remember to always be kind to one another. Thank you.